Hello and welcome to this tutorial in array sorting in C programming. In this tutorial, we're going to cover how to sort an array in an ascending order. Of course, you reverse the indexes if we want to get it in a descending order. Ascending order means that the smallest numbers will be placed or displayed first. They will sit at the first indexes, and then the largest number will have the largest index in the table. The smallest are first, and in order, the largest would be last. To explain this process, we have an array which is of course unordered here that contains the following numbers 9, 5, 2, 8, 6, and we want to sort it in a way like the smallest number would be at the first index and then sequentially in an ascending way to the largest number that would sit at the last index. Now, how we're going to do it? We're gonna need two cursors, so to speak. Two variables that will travel the array in two different ways, two opposite ways. You have the I equals 0 that will start at the first index, and you have the j equal len minus 1, which is the index value of the last element, of the last entity within the table. So at first we're gonna start at I equals 0, and for I equals 0 this element will be compared to all the other elements within the array. So for j that's starting from len minus 1, it will compare 6 by 9. Okay, in this case 6 is less than 9, so we need to swap these two elements and to replace 9 with 6 and vice versa. Then j needs to decrement by 1. After decrementing, j now sits at 8, which is the second element from the right to the left. It needs to be compared with 6. Of course, as you notice, 6 is already less than 8, so no need to swap these two values. So there would be no swapping, and j would go to the next element to the left, which is 2, or the element sitting at index len minus 3. So you go to 2. Here it happens that 2 is less than 6, so we need to swap the two values. 2 would be replaced by 6 and vice versa. 6 by 2. All right, so you have 2, 5, 6, 8, 9. Then you go to the next element, which is at j equal len minus 4. 5 is already greater than 2. 2 and 5 are already in order. 2 is less than 5 and it is placed right before 5, so no swapping is needed in such case. After going through all the elements from right to the left until of course j reaches I. Now we need to increment the value of I, so I is at 5. J needs to go all over again from right to left. It compares 9 with 5, no swap, 8 with 5, no swap, 6 with 5, no swap. Once it arrives to 5, the loop for j breaks out, and then I is incremented by 1 and it sits as 6. Here we see that it became sorted already without having to go through all the process. Now let's write the program. At first we need the function that will return a sorted array from an inputted array which is unordered. This function will return an integer array. Just to make it simple, we're going to work with integer arrays. Int array sort, it will take another array and the length for that array. Int I equals 0, int j equal len, the two cursors that will travel through, one from left to the right, which is I, one from right to left, which is j. Now we need an empty container for the swapped value, so int temp, which is temporary value, and finally we need to place the array that we've gotten from the caller from this area into another array. We will call it t equal a. For I equal 0, I less than len, I plus plus. For j equal len minus 1, of course not len because j needs to start at the last index and the value of the last index is len minus 1, not len. J is greater than I and j minus minus. J needs to decrement. If t of I is greater than t of j, then we need to swap temp equal t of I equal t of j, and t of j equal temp. The reason I needed a temporary container or variable because if I place t of I equal t of j, the value of t of I has been overwritten by t of j. So we've lost that value. That's why we need to place it in a third container, which is temporary, because once I place t of j inside t of I, like when I write t of I equal tj, the value of t of I has already been crushed by that of t of j. That's why we need a temporary third variable. Finally, we return the table. I also need another function, which is not a function, a void rather, that displays the sorted array. Instead of writing it in main, let us make it a void procedure. Void display array, the input as an array, and the length of that array, or the size in other words. I need I to loop through that array. At first, let us create an empty or two empty lines. So print f, and the array will start here, a equal for I equals 0, I less than len, I plus plus, print f, and here since we are dealing with integers, %d, and a at index I. Now as long as the element is not the last element, we need to add the comma separators between them. If I is different then len minus 1, in other words, as long as I is not the last index, printf, add to the display 1 comma. And finally, close the array, printf, outside of the loop of course, 1 square bracket, and also breaking the lines to make the display more obvious. Going to main right now, int array equal, let's declare an array of 9 values, unsorted of course, and 3. We need the variable for the sorted array, so int sorted is equal to, let's call the function array sort of array 9 elements. Finally, we're gonna call the display procedure display array sorted and 9. And here's the final result, an array that is sorted from 0 to 9.